You may have noticed Trevor Bassett come out behind Rai Benjamin, all dressed in black. The 26-year-old, there he is. He has a legitimate shot of making this team. He's unsponsored. Imagine if he makes the team. I think there might be a sponsorship coming. How about Christian Coleman? Christian Coleman, now here comes Noah Lyles. Noah Lyles in a 982. He's won another national championship. And the world champ is going to the Olympic Games. Murray Davis got out better. Now Sha'Carri starts to wind up, but she goes past Jefferson. Sha'Carri Richardson, 1070.
Yeah, track and field sponsorship model is really, really interesting. I think there's a ton of conversation about how do you grow the sport, what's good for the sport, and obviously right now, track is trying to grow. Most athletes are supported by a footwear brand. That's where the majority of the money is coming from. There's a few non-endemic sponsors that are out there that are getting involved with athletes, which is really, really cool, but there's no league, there's no system where athletes are getting paid outside of footwear brands for the most part. Footwear brands are really caring about the top 0.01% of track and field athletes. If you're not top 3 in your event, if you're not going to the Olympics and probably gonna make a final, it's very, very difficult to make a very livable wage within running. There are definitely individuals that make good money within the sport. Maybe you have a contract, maybe you don't. If you do have a contract, it's probably not that financially lucrative by any means. It's more like a scraping by situation, and again, everyone's a little bit different, but the top of the sport is taken care of. Everyone else is really trying to figure out how to potentially stay in the sport. One of the jarring things going into this, if you're an unsponsored athlete, you're trying to figure out what gear you're going to be wearing, and generally you're rocking a kit that has a brand logo on it from a brand that's not actually supporting you or sponsoring you. If you're not supported by a major footwear brand and then you go out there with a logo on you, from the brand perspective, why would the brand pay for that ad space if they're going to get it for free? And from the athlete perspective, it's kind of this catch-22 of you want gear to perform it at your highest level, you want the stuff that works great. That sucks from the athlete perspective. It's definitely putting the power into the footwear brand's hands, and that kind of balance is a really interesting space within the sponsorship model. Again, brands being the sole source of financial support, no real league, and then athletes kind of caught in the middle of it of how do I want to compete, how can I stay in this sport, how can I make money, how can I make a living, kind of thing.
Bandit Unsponsored Project, I was really happy they selected me. Give us a little bit of cash to help alleviate the travel costs, medical, whatever. Give us these kits. They gave me compression shorts. Because the thing they do that's cool is like, it's essentially a 2-week contract. There's a release clause, so like, if a shoe company, I'm not gonna name names, but if a shoe company reached out between rounds like, hey, we wanna sign you, boom, I can get out of the contract just like that. So it's really like a no strings attached. We wanna help you, we wanna grow the sport. So shout out Bandit.
2023, we had 9 athletes that we worked with in the end. One ended up getting a footwear sponsor at the end of the trials, which was amazing. The big thing that we did in 2023 was we went into US Outdoors and we had significant amount of support for them for those short-term deals. Overall structure of how we approached in 2024 really didn't change. We did those 2-week deals. We kept the release clause. We added cash into every single deal that we were doing, which was a huge evolution of what we did in 2023 to 2024. And then the big change was the number of athletes. We ended up working with 35 individuals this year. People still haven't heard of Bandit, but also people are very taken aback by what the deal is that we were offering. There were a ton of conversations that was like, what's the catch here? What is Bandit getting out of this? And it's kind of explaining like, no, this is the whole essence of the program. Like, we want to support you. I mean, I think the like fundamentally cool thing that's happened throughout, again, kind of agnostic of performances, you're getting people drawn in lanes or in heats with some of the other biggest stars of their events. We have people lining up in the 100 next to Noah Lyles, who is making an undisclosed amount of money. That dude's getting paid and this dude's getting nothing. And like, they're still competing head to head on the biggest stage. And that's happening in everything. You're getting the unbranded kit right next to the Nike kit, the Adidas kit, the New Balance kit, and like a Trevor Bassett, a Courtney Acolo, who have been to that stage before and are now in an unsponsored space for whatever reason. But like, those are really cool stories, the same way of having someone like an Aiden Tucker or a Rachel Gearing who are coming out of college and trying to stay in the sport right now, looking for that next level. It just demonstrates that like these athletes are on the same stage. They're not necessarily on the same level yet, but some of them are younger, some of them are older, some of them are at different stages in life, and there's always that ultimate question of like, man, if they weren't working part-time jobs or they could focus on training and not have to stress like what could happen kind of thing.
I work remotely for the marketing team. Luckily I have the flexibility and they understand what I'm doing. Managed to support myself that way, which is really nice because it's definitely not easy to find a situation that supports us, never mind like people actually understanding like the sport I'm doing.
Are you the only one in your company that is doing this?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. Yeah, the guy that runs it was a teammate of mine at Syracuse. Yeah, they really understand it, which is pretty cool.
Are you doing all this in an effort to become a full-time professional athlete?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to be doing this full time.
Traveling to meets is crazy. Eugene, I'll use Eugene as an example. I mean, my flight out here costs like $600 and then I had to rent a car and drive down here. It's costing you at least $1,000, and that's if you're like really, really in the know. If you've got friends that you can crash with in Eugene, yeah, it's probably like way, way closer to 2K, 3K, especially competing at the Olympic trials. You want to be in a hotel, you want to lay low. But I mean, and then everything in between as well, like coaching, physio work, just like the costs of training to even get to compete at a stage like that, it just adds up so quickly for these athletes. And like you're investing a lot of money to be able to try and perform at that stage, and then the payoff right now, unless you really, really make it, is not necessarily gonna be worth it for a lot of athletes. And that's the unfortunate calculation that a lot of these guys are doing. At the highest level of the sport, you obviously have like the gold medalists, the world record holders. Those guys are set, they're making millions, they're doing good. You've got this tier that's in the like 80K to 150K range, which again is really solid money and making a ton. And then below that, you have a lot of the people who aren't making what would be considered like a livable wage a lot of the time. And depending on the event that you're in, depending on the visibility of that event, again, the brands are serving the athletes. It's just, if you want this to be a professional sport, getting 20 pairs of shoes a year is not a way to be a professional athlete, unfortunately. And that's still the footwear sponsors doing part of their job, but hey, how can there be this other way to make money out there? I think even from this weekend though, we saw Fred Curley out there in Oakley gear. That's really cool to see, because that's a non-traditional sponsor coming in here and like propping someone up. And ideally that's the case where like, hey, you might be getting shoes from somewhere, but you can also get cash from somewhere else. Would be super cool. Yeah, we're still a startup. We're an 11-person company, and I think one of the big early on ones that we all kind of level set on was we want to get to that spot where we're supporting athletes on an annual basis with significant sponsorship models, but we just are not there yet. We don't want to go out there, sign people to gear exclusive deals where we're not, from our end, feeling like we're truly taking care of someone. If we are going to enter that space, we want to do it right at a really significant level where athletes don't have to worry about paychecks. They don't have to worry about, can I sustain myself in the sport? We really want it to feel good for the athlete where they can go out and compete and not necessarily worry about everything else. And because we're not there yet, we started having those conversations of what does that look like for us right now? And I think that's where the unbranded nature of all of this came from, of really wanting to support those individuals that are performing at a super high level, but not boxing them into a corner the way that maybe sponsorships have been in the past, and really wanting them to have the freedom and the flexibility where they could win with these deals was the ideal case. Like, we didn't want it to feel like we were in any way taking advantage of athletes, or that the balance of like who was getting the best return out of this was in our favor. We wanted it to feel really good for the athletes, which I think is where we've landed, and everyone's super excited about the conversations that we've had with them, which is really cool. To shine a spotlight on some athletes that maybe don't necessarily get the spotlight all of the time. Obviously a lot of conversations about personal brands and growing that, and it's not the easiest thing to do, but from Bandit, we're really good at creative. This YouTube video, I'm sure, is gonna be absolute fire, and like, we're good at that. We can do that storytelling for athletes and kind of prop up these amazing individuals, and that's where we excel. So being able to take that plus supporting the athletes, I think, was the ideal thought process of how we would ultimately approach Eugene. And then we went out and executed that. Genuinely, we feel like this is a win-win for the brand and the athlete, and those conversations were great with the athletes because it makes them realize that it's not like scammy, which is what most of the people thought. Like, oh, this is weird, I got a DM from this brand, this feels too good to be true. what's going on. But yeah, it's been awesome so far in 2024, and excited to see going into the second weekend how the reception continues to grow.
And everybody else, CJ Allen has a shot. Look at Trevor Bassett digging deep. So Benjamin wins 46-47. CJ Allen
And the ever-present Trevor Bassett making yet another team. So that's your team, Benjamin Bassett.
2 of the 3 of those guys have never been to the Olympic Games.